This is a video for Christian women, Catholic women, anybody of the faith. So there's that saying that, would you die for your kids? And of course, everybody that's a parent is always like, yeah, I'd die for my kids. But then there's a reciprocation of it and says, but would you live for them? And, I don't know what you'd call it, but the vibe around that was like, made some people stop and reflect, whether it's like getting healthier or spending more time with them and, making the sacrifices now so that they can live for their kids. And it got me thinking. So Matthew 19:17, the end of it is saying, if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. To enter into life is to keep the 10 Commandments. And it's just so plainly put there, If we are not walking in the 10 Commandments, if we're not keeping them, if we're not loving our neighbor, we're walking in darkness. And, with Yeshua, the Spirit, the light, it came to reprove the world of sin. And that is so that you can walk in the light, so you can walk into the 10 Commandments, so you can enter into life. That is the way you do it. And, the 10 Commandments are easy compared to sacrificial law. But with the 10 Commandments, you shouldn't take it as a light thing because, we're commanded to keep the 10 Commandments. Yeshua ended sacrificial law and he refreshed the 10 Commandments. We're in the time of the refreshing. And if you want to live, if you want your children to live, keep the 10 Commandments. Raise them up in a way they won't depart, And that's the thing. Those who break the 10 Commandments and don't repent, you're going to end up in great tribulation, or you're going to suffer the second death in the lake of fire. And you are accountable for your children, because they're children. Isaiah 13:16 says, their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Your children will literally be dashed to pieces. The stuff in the Bible isn't in here as like, oh, it might happen. It's gonna happen. And it will, what side of prophecy do you want to be on? Do you want to be like the women in the wilderness during the second Exodus that's protected, that's being guided? Or do you want to be in great tribulation during that time, trying to follow the 10 Commandments, trying to love your neighbor, trying to seek God? Well, there's going to be so much bloodshed and more wicked stuff than we could ever imagine, And if the Father is chastising you, if he's pouring out grace upon your heart, listen to it. Just listen. He's trying to make it easy for you, and if you listen to it, he will guide you. Grace is poured out upon everybody in different measures. It's the tug you get on your heart. Listen to it. Your Sunday pastors might tell you differently, but, you can't grow in unmerited favor. You grow in grace. You grow in the conviction on your heart to change. You don't grow in the lovingness and niceness of sin. You grow in the, wow, I shouldn't be doing that part of sin. And then you turn from your ways. So women, if you love your children and you don't want them to be dashed to pieces, you don't want them to suffer the second death, you don't want to suffer the second death, you don't want to go through great tribulation, and you don't want to be on the bad side of prophecy, all you have to do is repent from sin. 1 John 3:4, sin is transgression of the law is the 10 Commandments. Deuteronomy 5 and Exodus 20 tells you the 10 Commandments. Leviticus 19:15-18 tells you to love your neighbor as yourself and how you do that. In Isaiah 42, something was going to be magnified and made honorable. Then you read Matthew 22:36-40 that literally tells you to love God and to love your neighbor. And loving God is keeping his commandments, and loving your neighbor is rebuking sin after you've picked the log out of your own eye. I think that's Matthew 7:5. Yeah. So before you rebuke your neighbor, judge your neighbor, you're supposed to do it righteously. So you can't be a hypocrite in judgment. First, you need to cast the beam out of your own eye. Then you can see clearly to cast the mote out of your brother's eye. You can't be a hypocrite in judgment. You need to make sure you're following the 10 Commandments to your best ability. Of course, there's occasions of stumbling because we're not perfect. We're still in our flesh. But you need to try and walk as purely and righteously by the Father as you can.